Like, so I did business that way. And then I was like in the fitness world, and I owned a gym, and it was like bodybuilders and professional wrestlers. And then I was in the online lending world, which was really like subprime stuff. And so it was like, even that was like a different world. Like I didn't talk to like normal corporate people. And then I got in that world, and like all of a sudden, like I couldn't curse anymore. I had to put my voice down. I had to like, really over explain things and really draw upon academic English and learn the language requirements and all of that. And that was just a whole new, just the culture of that. Learning that was the biggest challenge. The knowledge wasn't a challenge. The work wasn't a challenge. It was just learning the communication landscape.
Welcome to the Funny in Failure podcast, a podcast that celebrates failure and shines the light on the emotional side of comedy, with yours truly, Michael Kahan.
Howdy, howdy, howdy. This is a man who has lived 100 lives. Andrew has a fascinating and unique story, and it's wonderful to hear his learnings and his experiences. He really embodies the entrepreneurial spirit. I love his mindset for blending passion with work and finding ways to be fulfilled. Plus, Andrew gives us tools to help us reach our calling or the thing that lights you up. It's really awesome. Andrew also has a book, Failure Rules, the 5 Rules of Failure for Entrepreneurs, Creatives, and Authentics. Check it out in the episode notes or Google it. Okay, cool. Let's get into it. Andrew Thorp King is an executive fintech banker, spy novelist, speaker, punk rocker, podcaster, ex-bodybuilder, cigar lover, and serial entrepreneur. He has founded 2 independent record labels, Thorp Records and Sailor's Grave Records, and he's invested in many spaces, including online lending, fitness, lead generation, and independent music. When it comes to finding meaning in failure, Andrew Thorp King is living proof. Andrew draws on 2 decades of leadership, entrepreneurship, and a series of dramatic personal setbacks to coach and speak about transformation. His latest book, Failure Rules, brings a fresh and practical look at why failure may feel awful, but can fuel the journey towards your true calling. He's crashed and burned through bankruptcy, divorce, mortgage default, and more, yet rebuilt stronger each time. So as you can imagine, we dive deep and we cover a lot, and we chat about the calling journey, cigars and hot tubs, his new book, Bankruptcy and Entrepreneurship, Authenticity and Imposter Syndrome, marrying money and meaning, building himself back up and trying new things, rising to the occasion, plus much more. Before we get into this epic chat, in case you aren't aware, the videos are now available on YouTube under Michael Kahan. That's Kahan with a K, unless you're listening to it already. I'll still be posting snippets of these chats on Instagram under Funny in Failure, so check them out if you want to stay in the loop for upcoming episodes, or you want to ask a guest a question. I'd also love it if you would share the podcast or share your takeaways from the chat. It really motivates me, helps the podcast grow, and ensures I can lock in amazing guests like this one. And just as a final reminder, the podcast comes out at 3:30 Melbourne, Australian time, with the full video of the podcast to be released the following day. Okay, cool. Thank you. Let's get into it. I think given that you've got a cigar in your mouth, I'd love to know what cigars, and I think you do hot tubs as well, do for your soul.
Yeah. You want to start off with hot tubs and cigars? Is that where we're going here?
Yeah, I want to know.
Yeah. 2 things that go together well. Just, I love cigar pairings, whether it's pairing my cigar with my coffee and espresso in the morning, or whether it's with booze in the evening, bourbon, tequila, whatever. And usually around 9:30, 10 p.m. at night, that's when I get into the hot tub, get a nice TV set up out there, put the AirPods on, watch a little TV, light up a nice cigar, have it with, usually with a bourbon. And, it's my serenity time, it's where I really unwind and enjoy all of life. You get the fresh air, you see the stars, you get the wind, it's the best. You know what I mean? It's just, you got to live life,
It sounds amazing. How did you discover it, and how long have you been doing it for?
Well, cigars has been, I think, probably a daily habit, maybe for, maybe at least 20 or 15 years.
Okay.
But I started smoking cigars in 2005, but then it accelerated over time. I'm clipping it about 3 a day on average at this point. And it's just, it's just the aromatic presence of it, the whole, it makes life more flavorful for me. You know what I mean? It's just when I'm sick and I can't smoke, I just feel like life is dry toast, but on normal days when I get to have my cigars, it's like, it's the best, and having it in the hot tub is just, one of those enhancements of enjoying the finer things. So been married several times. My second ex-wife, who I'm still good friends with, she actually bought me my first hot tub when we were married. It was a Christmas present. It was very, very nice of her.
Oh, nice.
It's kind of all her fault. She didn't even like hot tubs, but she bought it for me. She didn't go in it.
Yeah,
now I go in it all the time. My current girlfriend, we go in it all the time. We'll spend all Sunday in it sometimes, for like 4 hours, just binge watching shows. We'll wake up and go in the hot tub and, have our coffee in there with a little rum. And then by the time the night falls, we're still watching TV and chatting. And that's when the tequila starts pouring. But yeah, so actually my first hot tub was destroyed in what they call a derecho, I think is how you pronounce it.
Oh,
it's like a 100-mile-an-hour straight wind. So it's got the strength of a tornado, but it's a straight wind. And this is at my old house. And a huge tree fell right on my hot tub, destroyed it.
No.
Next day, yeah, and like as soon as when the storm hit, man, I was in the house. And I was just getting off a call, and I was talking to a woman who's like, yeah, there's tornado warnings. I'm like, what are you talking about? Not even really believing her. And then as soon as I get off the Zoom call with her, I pour tequila, and I look outside, and I see it coming, and I run down the basement. Luckily, didn't spill any tequila. But as soon as I got to I hear like this huge sound. It was a boom, sound like a bomb goes off, right? And 6 or 7 trees fell on my house and my property.
Whoa.
And it was insane. It was $140,000 worth of damage. So I proceeded to call my friend and just chat with him in the basement while it was happening. And I got a little drunk. And I come outside, and there's news vans outside my house. And I thought they were like local news. And so I was discussing everything that happened. And I'm like, yeah, it was like apocalyptic horticulture. That was like the line that came out of my mouth. Little did I know it was actually national news. And then I was on Good Morning America the next day. They were showing clips of me. And then NBC News texted me and did another interview the next day. So it was kind of like a funny thing. So it ties into my book here, Failure Rules.
Yep.
Like make all your failures rule. When bad stuff happens, turn it into comedy, turn it into a good time. Look at the bright side. You know what I mean? And that was, it's almost emblematic of my book and kind of the ethos of my life, to be honest with you. Like everybody's like, oh, I'm so sorry about your house. I'm like, I'm alive. I had a good time and a good story to tell. You know what? Insurance will pay up. Nobody died. It's all good, baby.
I love that mindset, but I feel because this is like your baby, your child, you've had so many good times. Was this hard? I know we'll go over them, but you've dealt with many challenges in your life. Surely this was the hardest to deal with. The thing that brings you the most joy.
It was, because even like I've since moved and downsized, and all I gave a shit about was making sure that I could go somewhere where my hot tub could come with me. You know what I mean? So after that one was destroyed, there was a time for about a year or so where, it wasn't with the budget, with insurance and everything else, and finally got a new one. And then 6 months after I got a new one, I decided to downsize. So I paid to have it moved to my new place, and so I got it all set up my new place. So it's like, it's like a resurrection. Like I feel back alive again. Like that's like just part of my daily routine. And I care more about that than any of the indoor space. You know what I mean? Like outdoor space, hot tub, smoking, hanging out with friends, all that stuff, like more important to me than indoor space.
I love that. That's a great mindset. How long were you without your baby for? Was it a while, or did you move?
It was probably like a solid year.
Wow.
Yeah. But it just wasn't the budget. Like I had to use some of the insurance money for some other things that happened with the house and shit like that. You had to like, mix and match, and then eventually it opened up and I got it again. So there was definitely some discipline in holding off and pulling the trigger.
And mentally, how did you deal? Because it sounds like with the cigars, this is your meditation. It's how you unwind. It's how you relax. I've heard you talk about how it gives you ideas as well. What was that like year like, or did you just have to do other stuff to keep that creative spirit alive?
It was a little tougher, but I did find myself doing a little more like other outdoor stuff in good weather, hiking or bicycling, riding my mountain bike or whatever, taking walks. But yeah, it was a little tough, but I can tell you already, like there's a huge difference, because there's just something about, particularly in the winter when normally you're, got cabin fever and you're indoors, like being outdoors and being comfortable in the winter and just having the elements, the air and the wind and the skies and the star and all that stuff. Just like there's something about that for me that connects me with the sublime, connects me with the divine, and really helps me with like that calibration of my inner spirit with, the trajectory in life that I'm on, whether it's my creative pursuits or business decisions or relationship decisions, or just honestly, most of the time, it's just a sheer kind of like vortex of gratitude that I find myself in when I'm in that state. And that's
nice.
really like the biggest part of it, honestly, it's very, I guess common and kind of cliche to talk about gratitude practice, but for me, like it's not cheesy, it's real, like I really am thankful every day for all the little things in my life, and even the hard things. I mean, I wrote a almost 500-page book about hard things and failure and stuff that screws you up. And I'm even thankful for those things because of the, the lessons that they taught me and the way they taught me to like see beyond like the material and see beyond just like the temporal,
That's very rare because I also love talking about gratitude. And I know that most people just say it and they don't mean it. But after, looking at your book, hearing so many of your podcasts, all of that stuff, you actually embody it. It's very rare. But it's also like something where people are like, I'm so grateful. And you're like, yeah. But when you actually embody it,
Shut up.
yeah. When you embody it, there's something like you said it like transmutes something within you. You're in like this higher caliber of being. I don't know how to explain it, but it just, you see the world and feel the world differently. Is that kind of what you're saying as well?
Yeah, it is. And it kind of goes along with like the non-attachment ethos of Eastern religions, or even the non-attachment principles that exist in Judeo-Christian traditions, like where it's like, okay, I'm going to be grateful regardless of what's going on around me. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, okay, my house just got hit by all these trees and everything's in disarray. Okay, fine. What can I be grateful for? Right? Like detaching myself from like, circumstances and finding the things that still exist within my life and attaching more to those things that might be more enduring, more eternal, more long-term, that are going to transcend, And so for me, like gratitude is like this roadway to the transcendent, and that brings me stability internally. It brings me joy, and it brings me that strength through chaos, and God knows this world is full of chaos every day, right? So like, if you can find strength through chaos, man, and you got to practice to induce that, it's worthwhile to make it happen.
And I feel like we've all got this within us. So then life happens and then we forget. We go through hardships. There's probably like 20 we could talk about. And then is that what re-established it within you? Like maybe going through the bankruptcy or, you're having a split with a business partner or your music labels. Is that how you kind of rediscovered it?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I think there was the time in my life, right, where like I was going after all these things in my 20s and my 30s. And this was like, kind of like the blinders were on, right? Like I didn't know failure really yet for a long time. And I was building it in my life and didn't know it because I was building a lot of like faulty foundations, but they were pure hearted, right? And they were based on real desire and creativity and following what I thought was my path. And it was my path. But I don't think it was later until I actually encountered some of the real serious, meaningful failures, whether it was bankruptcy or divorce or business separations or, business failures or all these different things, or even like estrangement with one of my children, all these things, like when it was like, oh, okay, I need to actually figure out a way to build daily practices in my life, or at least almost daily practices in my life to center myself, because these things are going to keep coming in different forms with different severities and different cadences. But these type of events are part and parcel to life on earth. Yeah. Pretty much for everybody. But again, different severities, different cadences, different manifestations. And so I think that is really, and this is gonna sound really strange. I'm not trying to sell this, right? But I am a fan of alcohol. I'm not a fan of excessive alcohol. I would say I'm like Churchill, where I get more out of alcohol than it gets out of me, right? So even like balancing, like, having a few drinks each night, watered down over time with a meal and cigar, balancing that with extreme exercise, I'm an ex-bodybuilder. I like to lift weights a lot, and then other more moderate exercise, walking, biking, hiking, things like that, regular massage, the hot tub, integrating all those things into my life, along with the accent that is music as a soundtrack to my life. Yeah. All those things really, they play a part in helping me stay grounded mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, to handle, anticipate, metabolize, and optimize failure, hard times, irregularities, unexpected, curveballs that happen in life, right? So whatever it is for a person that works for them, like find a way to discover those mitigators, those rhythms that help you stay centered, right? And it's everything from mental practices, spiritual practices to physical practices, right? To me, I think it's usually a combination of all of them that really help to be the biggest bolster against, folding when hard times hit.
It's very rare because, it sounds like you know who you are. Most people don't, or that I've met or interacted with, don't necessarily have strong foundations. They don't really know what works for them, or they do things they know that doesn't work for them. You've got this strong foundation, obviously, through learning and, being probably more intuitive than the average person. But you also mentioned faulty foundation. What did you mean by that? And has that helped establish this strong foundation that we see?
Yeah, I think like in my 20s and to a degree, some of my early 30s, but mostly my 20s, I had a very kind of like, ready, fire, aim, entrepreneurial kind of like blinded optimism, right? And with little experience would step out on limbs. And I'm glad I did it, but I learned a lot, right? So now like it's more like ready, fire, adjust your aim in flight kind of thing, right? Like it's not quite ready, fire, aim because you got to try to, you can't wait for perfect conditions, but you still got to try to make them as perfect as possible or safe as possible, right? And so I think there was just a lot of ambitions that I went after that just weren't structured properly from the get-go. They ended up being faulty foundations, right? I didn't build enough redundancy into my life. I didn't have enough backup plans. I just assumed things were going to work out, whether it was a marriage or a business. And I didn't really properly underwrite these decisions in my life. Right now, I'm in financial services. I've been a banker in various forms for over 20 years now. My first career was in the music industry, but now mostly I'm a banker, doing stuff in finance. And so like, I look back, I'm like, wow, I didn't really do any risk assessments on that decision. I didn't really look at what could go wrong. I didn't think about my personal disaster recovery plan, And so now I really do things through that lens where I'm like, okay, it's almost like tragic optimism. Like, the idea that like, okay, bad things will happen. I'm going to be optimistic anyway. So let's try to identify what bad things might happen, how I'm going to handle them if they do. Am I okay with them possibly happening? Or are they so bad that I won't be able to handle them and I shouldn't make this decision? Or am I going to say, I'm going to make this decision. These bad things might happen, but I'm okay with these worst case things because I will handle them by X, Y, Z, right?
Yeah.
And so if they happen, they won't be welcome, but they won't be a surprise. And so it's underwriting my decisions through that lens.
It's also very interesting because I'm probably more like how you were when you were younger about, that blind optimism and not necessarily doing a risk assessment. But maybe this is a good way to kind of dive into it. I think you were a punk rocker. You love music. Can you tell me a bit about that? And then we'll transition into how you got into record labels.
Yeah. So I don't know, man, like, from an early age, I always loved music. And like when I was really, really young, like, I don't know, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, those ages, right? Like it was like classic rock or old heavy metal, it was whatever, Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, stuff like that. But I don't know, it was maybe like 7th, 8th grade, somewhere around there. Somebody gave me a mixtape and it had like straight up hardcore punk bands on the tape. I mean, it was everything from like Black Flag to the Subhumans to Sex Pistols to Murphy's Law to bands like that. And when I heard that music, I was like, whoa, this is totally different dimension. This is that like raw, gritty energy that really speaks to my spirit, speaks to my mind. That's what's already in my head. That's the energy that I'm already bringing to life. This is just mirroring that.
At that age, that's crazy to me. Yeah.
And so from then on, like I'm 51 years old now, and that's still the stuff I listen to. I still listen to albums that I listened to 30, 40 years ago.
Oh, cool.
Whether it's the Cro-Mags or Murphy's Law or Black Flag or whoever it is, Agnostic Front, I still listen to a lot of the same old bands. I listen to a lot of new stuff too. Like I don't always just listen to hardcore punk, but like that's almost like my break glass in case of emergency music. When there's a crisis going on or some sort of intense circumstances, that's the stuff where like I put that on and I feel empowered and like that's when I start doing main character shit. That's what anime.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. Main character, that's great. And then did you have aspirations to, be in a band and do that full time?
No, I did a band once for a while in like my early 20s. And this is probably right after I did my bodybuilding competition. And then we disbanded because just everybody had different directions in their lives. Ended up putting out a record from those recordings on my record label years later, but it was just for fun. Like, we didn't really go very far. We did open them up for a few cool bands that I looked up to, like Vision or Murphy's Law or bands like that. But, it wasn't very serious. So I went in the other direction and, tried to marry my writing, my love of writing, because I had an English degree, with music. I ended up writing for music magazines. That made no money. So then I shadowed somebody at a record label and, made a crazy move to max out my credit cards and start a record label. And so there's ups and downs for that. But, I've released over 100 albums over the decades. And,
Oh, I didn't know it was that many. Wow. That's crazy.
Between the two labels, it's over 100. And, maybe about a tenth of those, or 15% or so, are actually like perennial titles that continue to sell. But that's just kind of how it is. It's almost like when you run a record label, it's almost like an insurance pool to a degree. You know what I mean? Like the winners pay for the losers to some degree.
Yeah,
right?
That's what I was thinking. There would have to be a ratio that you're like comfortable with, whether it's 10%, 15%, 50%. Did you think that all of them would sell? Like, how did you decide of like what to pick? And
this goes back to that blind optimism, man. I was doing this mostly in my 20s, and I was just like, it was rolling the dice on most of them. And it wasn't really towards maybe the back end of doing the labels seriously and full time towards the end, where I got to understand how to choose better, right? And not just choose based on what I liked and who I thought was cool, but more on data and more on more realistic sales projections. But it was different back then. The data wasn't always really clear or strong, and it's still always going to be speculative. But my second record label, Sailor's Grave Records, has a much better cogent kind of predictability and sales history. And so I think with that one, I kind of fell into a nice rhythm. But at the end of the day, the music business has changed so much since then, and labels, the utility of labels is very narrow at this point. It's only certain use cases where independent labels really even make sense for an artist to engage with. So, at a certain point, I love it as a hobby now, and it's a huge part of the ethos of my life, the punk rock ethos. But I don't really invest in them anymore, and I put my money in other things.
Fair. I know you said it's changed, but maybe when you're first starting, how do you analyze like the predictability of sales? I've never even considered that. Is it because you would get a lot of new people or potentially people that haven't sold much, but you see that they're talented. Is there like a formula now, or
I mean, back in at that point, sometimes I would do new bands if there was some sort of buzz for them, but it was a total crapshoot most of the time, because they could break up as soon as you sign them and pay for the recording, and then they never tour, and then nothing ever happens.
Oh, really? That'd be so annoying.
And then your money's just gone. Like, they don't owe you money back. It's just gone.
Yeah.
But most of the time, I tried to get bands that had at least one album under the belt and had some sort of, at least approximate sales history to trace, and then you try to project out from there. But even then, it's a risk. I mean, there was bands where I put out a couple records for them, and the first record did really, really well, and then the second record didn't do as well.
Yeah.
And you put more money into the second record, thinking that you're building something, but then it just kind of falls apart. So, like, it was really just,
I'm sure you
never really knew. It was always a risk.
You would have learned a lot just also dealing with people and marketing and all of that stuff, which you've applied now.
And dealing with big personalities and artists with all kinds of crazy stuff going on in their lives, and the best artists were the most troubled ones. So, it got interesting.
What did that teach you about dealing with people? Did you have to change your approach, or did it just teach you certain skills?
I don't know, man. I think it gave me an appreciation for what it actually takes for good art to come into the world. And I think it really does take, in a lot of cases, like, it takes people that have a unique perspective based on oftentimes unique troubled experiences, right? Yeah. And even if their music ends up being positive as a reaction to those troubled experiences, right? Like, so it's like, the best art, I think, really comes from a place of agitation half the time.
Interesting. And also, like, when you're dealing with potentially a lot of troubled people and stuff, did it teach you stuff within yourself? As in, like, how to be more, maybe set boundaries, or be like, no, that's not going to work for me. Or you're like, okay, sure. Like, like maybe people please, or was it just an interesting observation to see how people
I was probably the opposite. I was very aggressive. I would just, if somebody wasn't getting back to me, I'd call them 15 fucking times till they called me back. Right. I was just like, I was like balls to the wall. Like, I was after it, and I didn't have much margin for delays and errors because of how tough that business was. So, If anything, I've softened since then, and my business practices now that I've somehow made it to the corporate world, over time, from being an entrepreneur for many, many years, owning a fitness center and owning online lending companies and the record labels, and then now in corporate banking in the fintech world, it's a lot less pressure. It's not the off-road entrepreneurial adventuring of hunt and kill all the time. So, my approach is much more softened, much more nuanced, and I'm not dealing with troubled artists all the time. So I can afford that approach.
Yeah, I'm sure you still deal with egos, but in a very different way, because that's the nature. But I'm sure you've learned skills along the way to be able to, calm yourself.
It's flexing. It's like, trying to read the personality and okay, this person needs to be, I hate to say handled because that sounds so managerial. I don't mean it that way, but this person needs to be related to in X way. This other person needs to be related to in Y way, and it's just that emotional intelligence, which I didn't have for a while. And I think now I've developed that and widened that.
And was that developed? We'll talk about, there's so much stuff to discuss. Was that developed through being in corporate, or was that developed through all of your life experiences? And as you said, being softened and learning what works and what doesn't work, or a combo of both?
I would say both, but mostly the corporate world really did it for me, right? Because most of my life I wasn't with normal people. You know what I mean? Like, even when I was in the music industry, even like my attorneys had tattoos on their necks, right? And nobody spoke academic English, and cursing was normal, and speaking loud and interrupting people and street talk, that was normal. So I did business that way. And then I was in the fitness world, and I owned a gym, and it was like bodybuilders and professional wrestlers. And then I was in the online lending world, which was really like subprime stuff. And so it was even that was like a different world. I didn't talk to normal corporate people. And then I got in that world, and all of a sudden, I couldn't curse anymore. I had to put my voice down. I had to really over explain things and really draw upon academic English and learn the language requirements and all of that. And that was just a whole new, just the culture of that. Learning that was the biggest challenge. The knowledge wasn't a challenge. The work wasn't a challenge. It was just learning the communication landscape. And so I think that's what brought me out. And, it was almost like all of a sudden I'm in the world of normies, and I've never been in the world of normies. I was a purveyor of punk rock payday loans and gym memberships for so many years, and then all of a sudden I'm in corporate world. And now I've been there. It's finishing up my 12th year now. So
cool.
Now my kind of communication, palette is widened enough, right? So, but the initial years were tough. It was I often joke, it was going from one world to the other was almost going from being a porn star to a regular actor. It's quite a transition.
Oh, that's such a good analogy. And you've also spoken about imposter syndrome and inauthenticity being, given your life, and then going to a world where you said you've had to put your sleeves on, you've changed your voice, change how you communicate. What helped initially? Because when you come from that, you can be scared, you might want to give up, you might want to just quit, but fear would be there. What helped you just push forward?
Yeah, I mean, in those early years, right, it was really weird. I did feel like I had this duality that was incongruent. And it wasn't until I realized that I was just expanding the versions of my authentic self, not departing from my authentic self. And that it was just different versions that had different purposes, right? And I think at that time, a very practical thing. I would go out in my car after work, and I almost had Tourette's. I just start cursing out loud just to get all the curse words out that I couldn't scream. That was very practical. But then I really started digging into reading more business books and what people would call self-help or personal development books at the time. And prior to that, all I had read was spy novels for pleasure. And I even wrote a spy novel. But then I got into reading these other type of books, and it really changed my life and led to the inspiration to write Failure Rules. And one of the main books that really inspired me was Choose Yourself by James Altucher. I don't know if you know who James Altucher is. He runs a very popular podcast, popular investor, chess player, and but he had lost it all and gained it all several times. So he wrote very vulnerably about failure, about ambition, about reinvention. He even had a book called Reinvent Yourself. But his book Choose Yourself was just really like a game changer for me. And I just remember reading it and just feeling so many similar kind of like emotions. And I think that really helped me out how to like straddle both worlds of like being who I am, reconciling my past persona, but yet still growing into a new one that was expanded and allowed space for me being different in different environments and yet still not betraying who I was, And so I think that was really what helped.
That's really awesome because, like, as I said before, when you're thrust in a new environment, it can be quite overwhelming. Our nervous system can be going crazy. You could be playing all these games, like we said, like the imposter syndrome of, oh, I'm not meant to be here. And what we see often in the world is when people have these emotions, they come from fear and they just quit and give up. But you still, you gave yourself the opportunity to thrive, which is very rare. Was there ever moments of I'm going to leave, I'm going to quit, or you knew, because you talk about the calling journey, was there like part of that within you where you're like, no, I need to just keep on going forward, get easier, get easier?
Well, there was times where I wondered for sure. I was definitely not sure. And there was times where I almost felt a little numb because I just felt a little suppressed. But I think a lot of that was in my head just because I didn't know how to deal with it. It wasn't necessarily real. It was just how I felt. Our feelings can betray us all the time, which is why we have to challenge them against reason and logic and reality. And so, there was definitely times like that. But eventually, I think what really broke for me is as I got promoted, once the first time I got promoted, then like my interactions and my contacts at work became more elevated. There was more stimulation, more challenge, more intellectual kind of challenge, and then the fulfillment started to come. Right. So as I became more fulfilled and as my skills grew, then I became more comfortable in that piece of my life. Whereas before there was some imposter syndrome, which I have a quote in the book where I say, don't fake it till you make it, believe it till you become it. Fuck imposter syndrome, and I tried to embrace that. Just believe it till you become it. Don't fake it till you make it. Just believe it. It's going to happen, and keep going. Work through being uncomfortable and believe it till you become it. And I think I did that eventually, and then I became what I felt was like successful enough. It's still challenging every day. There's still plenty to learn, but successful enough. And I think that's when I became more comfortable. Like, okay, this is a main piece of my life. This is expansion of my identity. I still am able to integrate reasonably the other parts of my personality, and I'm able to pursue, this thing one, thing two thing I talk about in the book. That's failure rule number 4 is embrace the thing one, thing two dependency. Thing one is like an enabler pursuit that gives you stability and helps you build skills to then give you the freedom on your off hours to pursue your thing to pursue, which is more like your North Star dream. It's aspirational, may or may not happen, but you're going after it. Like you have a full-time job and then you're trying to be a comedian on the side, or get a full-time job and on the side you're writing books and you got record labels, you do other things like I do. And so it's like figuring out like this tapestry, this portfolio of pursuits where like almost like an investment portfolio, you're just calibrating it, right? Like your outside pursuits might not give you much money, they give you plenty of meaning. Your other pursuits might give you plenty of money and a little less meaning, but still some meaning, right? But overall, you're closer to 100% fulfillment in both two buckets, the money bucket and the meaning bucket. So it's marrying money and meaning. Like, how can you accomplish that through a portfolio of pursuits?
I think I was just about to say you talk about marrying money and meaning. And a lot of times, I know I've been like this, where if we're not doing the thing that we love, we can feel like a failure and shame and all these negative emotions. But that's not necessarily the reality of the world. You need money to live. And so I love that you've got this framework of being able to balance the two, where obviously you like fintech banking and it does a lot for your soul as well, but it also allows you to have, passion and purpose outside of that because you got the money to come in. How did you kind of come to that conclusion? Because with me, as I said, shame and stuff, sometimes it can block us and you just go, no, I can't deal with this, but you've actually built a framework for it, which obviously means you can thrive and be healthier as well.
Yeah, I think it was once I realized how to get at least some money out of a pursuit that was mostly based, some meaning out of a pursuit mostly based on money, and how to get some money on a pursuit that was mostly based on meaning, right?
Yeah.
I had to get a little bit out of both, because when you just have meaning, like when I was running my record labels and they started to fail and they're spiraling out of control, all of a sudden having no money depleted all the meaning out of the pursuit. And so it's fucking useless. And at the same token, if you have only money, but you're empty and you hate going to work every day and there's no meaning, that's useless too. So both those scenarios are bad. So you got to find a way to balance the two and get some meaning out of the money pursuit and some money out of the meaning pursuit. Yeah. Right. And so that to me was kind of like, oh, this is more the secret sauce to try to go after and balance and accomplish.
And was that through life experience, or did you meet someone who explained, like the creative journey and the money journey, or like how, because it's very unique. I haven't heard anyone quite talk about the right balance for oneself.
No, it was just through my own experience. And then that's just kind of what I came to after my life. And then once I hit it and realized, oh, this is actually fulfilling, this composite, then I was able to put it into words and put it into the book and kind of talk about it.
Because also what you've spoken about is changing the mindset as well, and being like, yes, you're in fintech, which is different to what you thought you would be doing, but that that relationship, once you kind of figured it out, as you said, it's given you way more meaning. And I think that's really interesting, because it was just it wasn't simple, but it was like a simple switch, and then your whole life changes just because of that little belief system that you've worked on. That's that would change a lot of people's lives, being like that.
It really was. It was a perspective change, right? Nothing had changed my circumstance. Well, some things did, but mostly my perspective changed. Maturity kicked in, a width of perspective and vision kicked in. And then I was able to go, oh, okay, this is the way I ought to be looking at this. This is the way this fits into the larger story of my life,
Interesting. And then from the identity side, because you've been in music, punk rocker, bodybuilder, some of the other stuff, was there like an identity crisis per se when you switched into this world as well? And if so,
yeah, there was initially for sure. Yeah, I mean, I was almost like afraid that anybody would discover that I had tattoos. And this was, 10, 12 years ago. And in that short time, like now tattoos are so much more accepted, even in the corporate world. Yep. But just 10 years ago, they weren't, right? There was still a lot more of the older generation in leadership, and just I didn't really want anybody to find out that I was covered in tattoos, other than a few people. So I was very nervous about that. And I was very nervous about talking about my personal life because, most people, they're just into sports or whatever. They're talking about stuff like that. And like, I'd rather talk, I want to talk about like punk rock or cigars or lifting weights or whatever, like stuff I'm into. And so I think my interest didn't really align with the golfer kind of interests of like most finance people, you know what I mean? Yeah. And nothing against me. I just was different, right? So there was definitely some like identity questions, right? Like, why am I here? How do I fit in here? Over time, I think reality proved that my assumptions were not fully founded or accurate, right? And so it was really just over time that they started eroded against the positive reality that I was encountering.
Well, good for you for making those shifts. When I used to be an accountant and I worked corporate, and I do like sport, but all conversations were, did you see the boys on the weekend? And it was the same talk. And, perhaps I could have changed the subject and talk about other stuff, but I just viewed it as we're all so suppressed, and not a judgment whatsoever. We just didn't have and we were young. We didn't have the ability to like talk about things that we liked. And it was the same conversation maybe 50 times a day. And then we get to the weather. And you're like, I can't tell what the weather is. We have no windows.
I know. It's exactly right. But, to a degree, like, it's not really the fault of anybody, right? Because on the one hand, you have corporations that tell you everybody should get to know each other, and we're all, we all have a unified culture. And on the other hand, the very real reality that they also transmute is, hey, these are your colleagues, not your friends, right? Like, you're not supposed to date them. Don't get to know them too well. They might be your boss one day. They might have to fire you. You might be their boss one day. You might have to fire them. Don't get too close, right? So on one hand, there is this expectation of like, don't share too much of your personal life, right? Like these are colleagues. They're not friends. And so the balance between like, you got to be with these people all the time, so you better make friends. On the other hand, don't be too close because that's not what we're here for. And like trying to navigate that is difficult if you're sitting in an office with people for 40 hours a week and you see them more than you see your significant other, your kids, or anybody else in your life. Like that's a difficult thing to behold.
Yeah. And what were the tools, or as you said, just how do you find that balance? Because as you said, especially early on, your interests may have been different, but I'm sure as you opened up, people, you probably noticed that they were more open to, your differences as well.
Yeah, and then you realize you're not as different as you think you are either, right? Like I think in our own
Exactly.
heads, we always think we're, on the outs or more different than we really are. And a lot of that's between years and it's insecurity driven, right? Especially when you're in new environments that are unfamiliar, right?
Yep.
So it's just eroded over time. And, like I would say I can count on one hand, like people who I work with that I consider to be close friends and some of them very close.
Nice.
And that's all you really need, and even without that, it's fine too. Right. And it's like, I came to found like that it was a very robust, value driven culture, and that it was an environment of flourishing, and that, I found a great career within that space. So, I think it's just a matter of like, doubt your doubts, doubt your assumptions always.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think that's so great because, I certainly had those feelings as well. And probably most of what we're going through is all in here, and to really challenge ourselves because how you get here is, it starts from the gym space as well. You've got a very unique story. How did you decide, or why did you decide to start your own gym? Was it through your love of bodybuilding? What got you?
Yeah, that was a piece of it, right? And at the time, I was in the online lending space, and my business partner, he was also kind of a meathead too. He loved to work out. And so we were looking to diversify and buy another business, and there was a gym for sale in the area. So we did our due diligence. We bought this gym. We ended up moving our office next to the gym. So we had like our loan office next to the gym. So we had some employees working for both companies. I mean, I'd literally be like doing leg press, and like somebody would hand me an underwriting package as I'm like on the leg press, like giving commentary on it. So like this integration of those things. And so, yeah, it was just like wanting to buy another business and kind of diversify. That was available. It was of interest to me and my partner. So we gave it a go. And it ended up not working out. But I learned a lot through it, and it could have worked out. It's just that at a certain point, it didn't make sense of pouring more capital into it versus the other business. So.
And I think this is really interesting in the themes that we're talking about here, and also what you're about to say is all in your book as well. Was this the business partner that ended up going to jail, or then the gym was doing well, but it was very difficult? Can you tell me a bit more about how you?
Yeah. So he had made a mistake, around the 2008 financial crisis with the real estate stuff and the ninja loans, no asset, no job, no income, kind of the loose underwriting that was back then. And had some investment properties that went belly up, and his tax returns didn't match his income, and ended up having to go to jail for about a year. But that happened while we were running these businesses, and so I had to drop him off at prison and then go run these businesses by myself.
That's so crazy. I'm sure the stress was.
Yeah, and then there was like issues with investor relations as a result of that, and there was some cash flow issues and some regulatory pressure on the loan company, and at the same time, the gym was underwater, but like on the right track. Like I hired a consultant and put in place all the things that needed to be put in place for it to be in the black within 12 months, but we just didn't have the benefit of time, or I didn't, now being left alone, running everything myself. And so I just had to like isolate and cut one out. And so I had to cut that gym out and just focus on the money business.
See, I find this crazy, but like so empowering from what you've learned from this, because, this is a new venture, something that you love. You can see that it's like building up, and then, life happens, your business partner made a mistake, and now you're left dealing with all of it. And then you're also, I think, doing your labels as well. Yeah. And you're also losing money there. And just being able to mentally, you talk about these micro, micro enthusiasms or micro?
Yeah, micro enthusiasm. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you tell me?
Micro momentum, really. Yeah. Drawing enthusiasm from micro momentum. Yeah.
So you said that it was a very tough period, really hard. And I think you're also going through a divorce at the time. Seeing, two things that you love, or three things, your wife as well, all crumbling, low point. How do you build yourself back up and, move forward?
Yeah, I mean, that was really tough time, man. I mean, that really was like kind of like the shroud of circumstances that led to the writing of this book. Like, was those two twin failures within a very brief time period. I kind of had this business divorce with an investor. My other partner went to jail, and then my wife and I split all at the same time. So all of a sudden, I found myself with no office to go to by day, no home to go to by night. I'm living in a hotel room, and it was like this empty failure space. And I was listening to this song "Divinity of Purpose" by the metal band Hatebreed, and the lyrics to it, which I can't recall right now, but I talk about it in the book. Yep. Basically just talking about, being kind of on the ledge, the ledge of life, but then like being overwhelmed by the divinity of purpose, right? Like getting back on your feet because of purpose, that divinity of purpose is something beyond you. And that's kind of what I embraced. Like, instead of like wallowing in like depression or, misery or alcoholism, and don't get me wrong, I love alcohol, but, instead I just revs up my idea engine. James Altucher talks about this, like, always have your idea engine going, always be creating ideas, even if they aren't acted upon, just to keep that muscle going. And so in that time, like, I finished my first spy novel. I started writing Failure Rules. I secured capital, reinvest in the record labels and resurrect them, and put out, I think, like 10 records between the two labels around that time. Cool. And also in that time, I started a consulting business to the online lending space, and was able to replace income pretty quickly. Then started a lead generation company, and then networked and was able to get my job that I still have today in fintech. That was all within that space. So the whole world's falling apart, and like 5 new threads began, and they all had some success at some timeline, right? Different timelines, different levels of success, but like, in failure, in the emptiness, you got that opportunity, man. Everything's falling apart. As Jocko Willink would say, good. Now you can start again. Now you can refresh. Now you can come up with 10 new ideas, recreate a whole new life.
Not many.
That's why I embraced it.
You're probably the only person I've ever heard of in my life where, literally going through that, as we said at the start, you could be paralyzed by fear. You could just, alcoholism, you could never leave your room, terrible things can happen. What allowed you to hear that calling voice or that divine purpose, the divine calling? What allowed you? Because when we're coming through, a marriage divorce is meant to be the most stressful thing that one goes through. And then you've got, even just having a business partner who's going to jail and dealing with all of the paperwork and all of that stuff, that's crazy. Then editing all these other things, and just you obviously going through many shifts. Why did you decide to take the call? Tell me all your secrets.
I just believe that I was born for a purpose, right? Like, I'm not saying like a purpose, like I got to be president or save the world or anything like that, but like for whatever purpose it is, whatever small footprint it might have, like, I wasn't born to give up. I wasn't born to crumble. And if things happen to me, I make sure that they happen for me. And, to the degree that I got to leverage a relationship with God, that I got to lean on the power and strength I get from hardcore music, I'm going to do it. And, the consistency of lifting weights and how that produces positive emotion physiologically, all those things just help me I'm going to find a way. You know what I mean? I'm going to reinvent. I'm going to pivot. I'm going to find a way.
I love that. And that's, you said 3 really important things, your connection to the divine, also lifting weights. People probably don't understand, that structure, the rewards you get later on. Was that just your place of just, calm, all of that? Can you dive into it?
Yeah. I mean, like, I don't know. There's a meme that I've seen that's just like, are you sad? Lift weights, you'll feel better. Are you happy? Lift weights, you'll feel better. Yep. Is everything falling apart? Lift weights, you'll feel better. You know what I mean? Like, having a great day, lift weights, you'll feel better. Like, whatever it is, it's the answer for me. Yep. For other people, some other sort of exercise, whatever. But like, I don't understand people that don't exercise. I just don't understand it. I mean, I understand it exists. For whatever reason, they have barriers towards it. I understand it's not always easy. It's not always practical. But I would not, my emotional regulation, it's just not good. If I don't get to the gym for if I have to go like a week without going to the gym, it's a problem. I can't go on vacation without finding the gym. It's the first thing I Google. find a gym and find a cigar lounge every time I go on vacation. Those two things have to happen.
Interesting. And also from the exercise point of view, it changes your whole physiology. It changes your well-being. It changes also just getting out the house, especially when you're going through a low point. Like exercise is crucial.
Yep.
Even I used to laugh at my dad when I was a kid. He's like, just go for a walk if you're not playing basketball or whatever. Just do something. Like, it doesn't do anything. I'm not gonna change anything. And I really appreciate that now. Now I go for walks every day on top of all the other stuff that I do. And it changes everything. But I know so many people that, for example, might do work corporate, sit at the desk the whole day, then do nothing. No judgment whatsoever. I used to be like that, but
there's no judgment. I just don't understand it. I feel bad that they don't understand how good they could feel.
Yeah,
by having some sort of exercise regimen.
I agree. I think it's like if you're feeling sad or depressed or whatever, that's like the most important thing to do is just get out and move. I think that's really important.
Get out of your head and get into your body, and it'll cure your head. You know what I mean? Like strong body, strong mind. Or you talk about walk. Ryan Holiday talks about walks and talks about how the Stoics talked about taking long wandering walks. And while it's good for the body, it's even better for the mind and better for the soul. Like the distillation of thought happens often on walks. You know what I mean? Or other exercise. Like a lot of my ideas crystallize and come together. I could be working on something. Say I'm writing for a couple hours in the morning, then I go to the gym. With the blood flowing and the mind going, like that stimulates kind of like the connectors that, oh, you know what? I need to go back and change that piece. Or, oh, that was the idea I was searching for. Like it just, I don't know, it mobilizes the synapses in my mind.
I agree. I do screenwriting. And if I'm just at home writing on my computer the whole day, I ain't getting much. But when I'm going out, especially walks now, I'm noticing, it's going to sound so lame. I'm noticing the trees now. I'm noticing the plants. I'm looking at the colors. I don't know. I would have laughed to myself 10 years ago if I would speak like this, but it is definitely changing how I'm seeing the world and massively not only helping me, but creativity and all of that stuff as well.
I think it's a game changer, man. I mean, and like you said, you might have been embarrassed about it years ago, but like, dude, I think it's a big piece of like, wisdom to lead a fulfilling life. If you integrate these things into your life, you'll find that everything else makes a little more sense. It's a little more manageable. You'll draw a little more fulfillment, meaning about all the other areas of your life. If you're just taking that time out to treat your body well, which stabilizes your mind, and you have maybe connection to something higher or bigger than you through nature or whatever it might be. Like those things are important. There's a reason you have that common phrase, "Go touch grass." Sounds stupid. Sounds reactive, but like. Yeah, there's some truth to that sentiment,
I agree 100%. And then I love this as well. A soul on fire is a soul alive. Can you tell me about that? Because that spoke to me.
Yeah, I think a lot of the case studies in the book are people that I would view as having taken unorthodox risks or had taken career or artistic paths that were risky. And the things that drove them is what I'm interested in and what I tried to dig into in the book. Like, how did they overcome failure and obstacles and still do what they did and get to where they are? And like, just going back to the Winston Churchill quote that success is going from one failure to another without loss of enthusiasm. Yeah. That fire of enthusiasm, that soul on fire, like that's a common thread in these people. Like, they're just like, no, this is who I am. I'm meant to do this. No matter what's in my way, I'm going to keep going. And I'm going to find a way. And that's just this undying passion in the face of like no affirming circumstance. I mean, I think of Henry Rollins, the singer of Black Flag. He when he was scooping ice cream, managing an ice cream shop in Georgetown, and got the opportunity to join a punk rock band and pretty much quit his job, embrace punk rock poverty, go on the road. And there was times where like they ate dog food because they had no food on the road. Yeah. But like he was like on this mission, he was on this adventure. He was a soul on fire. Like it didn't matter if it didn't make sense to the rest of the world. Like he was meant to do this. And of course now like he is who he is. He's an actor. He's been in movies. He's written books. He's had his other band, Rollins Band. But like it's just people like that, just that soul on fire. Like it's the punk rock ethos too. Like respectfully, I know you think this is crazy. Nothing against you, but fuck you. I'm going to do this anyway because I know I got to do this. And even if it fails, if I don't try it, I'll have regrets on my deathbed. So it's destroying future regret is a big piece of it too.
I love that you've got an ethos from, the music as well. I didn't know anything about punk rock until, learning about you and your story. That blows my mind. But also the regret side. I know that when I left corporate to pursue this and screenwriting, everyone thought I was crazy, but there was just something within me that was like, I
Yeah,
have
that's
to do
it.
this. But most people that I've met, they might have it or they can kind of see it, but they're too scared to do it because they're too scared of leaving community or values or parents and stuff like that. Do you have any advice for people like that? Because it seems to be the norm.
Yeah, so I think my advice is probably a little split, right? On the one hand, I just highlighted like a case of extremity, right? Like Henry Rollins' stories, they just went for it, right?
Yeah.
And there are people that need to do that and are meant to do that and are in a position in their life where even though it's full of risk, it's still a little less risk. They might not have a family, might not have kids, might not have a mortgage, all those other things. But then most people fall in that other bucket, right? Where it's just way too much risk. They can't just drop everything and chase something, balls out 100% and go after it because it just doesn't make any sense. Doesn't mean that sometimes they shouldn't do it anyway, but there's got to be enough signs, enough bright lights for it to make sense. Most people, I think, fall in the bucket of that thing one, thing two duality that I talked about. Like, okay, you have an enabler pursuit. How can you build enough margin in your life to reasonably build a structure to also go after your thing two aspirational pursuits while maintaining your thing one enabler pursuit? And do that in like a real planned way with like a multi-year plan with benchmarks and milestones. And I think that's more reasonable. And so there's an entire part of my book, multiple chapters devoted to that concept and case studies on people who've done that. I mean, one of them is this, I write this story about these two brothers I knew when I lived in the Midwest who came here from Lebanon, and they wanted to have their own businesses. To them, that was success in America. And so they didn't have the seed capital. So they went and worked for Disney on Ice, selling merch to like moms who wanted merch for princess merch for the little girls. But Disney on Ice paid for the lodging, paid for the food. So they had no expenses, but no home for several years. And they just banked their entire salaries. Then they came back, they used that seed money. And then today they own gyms and cigar lounges and even strip clubs and gas stations all in this one town. They seeded like a retail empire. I mean, obviously they had other partners and other ways of enabling, but the seed money came from that, like, okay, we're going to use this enabler pursuit, this radical enabler pursuit, be homeless for a few years, but bank our entire salary and then come back and go after this dream. So creative ways of leveraging one thing to build another.
I agree.
Just going for it and hoping it all works out,
Yeah, and it ties into what you said at the start with, being aware of maybe more risk as well. And also everyone has a different path. So for some people it might be drop everything and do it, or here are smaller steps to do it, which I think is really important. But also on there, I remember when I heard about the two Lebanese brothers, I used to work at Disney on Ice as a summer job. Holy shit. That is the worst job for the ones that travel. So it makes me appreciate
You understand their sacrifice.
Yeah, right? That is just what is such a. I am so impressed with them because if they were the ones traveling around the world or around America, that they're getting paid less than me and they're like my senior times whatever. Tough. It's like tough hours. They're treated like shit. It's not, it sounds nice because it's Disney on Ice. It was tough, especially for them. And they locked in a contract as well. They don't have much flexibility. They can't take days off. So it makes me appreciate their journey even more because
it's like being in a band without the rock star part. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Oh, that's crazy. I don't think I've ever brought up working on Disney on Ice, and I shall never again. I'm joking. Then just tying up a few bits, and then I've got a few more questions on your book. You've spoken about the internal spirit voice. So especially when we're scared and we're coming from fear, how do people even, I know you discussed in the book, but we've all got this voice in our head. It can be whatever people want to call it. We've all got, like, some people call it intuition, some people God, some people call it universe, whatever. We've all got this something within us which wants, like, that sparks that flame which we're interested in, but not many people allow themselves to see it. And so I'm just wondering if there's anything else that springs to mind that you want to say to just help someone to, it's there to look into it.
Yeah, I think for me, like, it was a mysterious thing, but like I heard it pretty clearly and I knew to never ignore it, right? Like if it's pulling on me, I can't ignore it. I can't bury it. I can't muzzle it. I can't cloud it out by being busy doing other things because ultimately it's going to make me sick that I'm not paying attention to it. Like, the author Stephen Pressfield talks about this. He uses different language, but he wrote War of Art and many other books. He talks about it. Like if you ignore that calling inside of you for whatever it is that's pulling on you, like a lot of times it'll physically make you sick, if not emotionally sick or mentally sick, or just so numb that life is just not really, bringing you any joy. Because there's certain things that we're meant to pursue or follow or be pulled into. And if we ignore it, we're just not going to be right. We're just not going to be right. It's different things for different people, but when it is pulling you, like, you know it. You know what I mean? You know it.
Yeah. I have so many friends that, felt the calling, as I've said, but then, due to different fears and stuff. But I also studied kinesiology for a few years, and it's different in America. But essentially, one of the aspects of it is emotional issues can manifest into physical issues. Exactly what you said. If you're not on top of your emotions or dealing with what you need to deal with, you get sick, and we see it play out in so many different forms. So I think that's really important that you bring it up as well. Was this?
And the flip side of that is, if you listen to it, and even if you're only able to devote an hour a week, 2 hours a week, and just water that thing slowly, but you start to get some of that micro momentum, the enthusiasm derived from even that little micro momentum, is so healing and so uplifting that it clouds out any all the part of your life that might be more of the majority of your time that might otherwise be soul sucking, right? Like,
I agree.
It's such a balm for other things that might ail you.
It's like, I don't know if you ever watched Star Wars. They always say, like, the dark is stronger than the light. And I don't agree with it whatsoever. As you're saying, like, 3% of the light will overpower 90%, 97% of what you're not dealing with. It's so much more powerful. I know that, say that again?
Like a pinprick of light has that much power.
Yeah, I agree. And did you learn this stuff from your dad? Because I know that he was or is this something that you've discovered on top of learning from your parents? Or
no, I don't think I learned any of this really from my parents. No.
Was your dad a pastor?
He was. Yeah, I got a chapter in the book called "Punk Rock Son of a Preacher Man."
Yeah.
So yeah, but him and I are kind of really like day and night. I mean, we share a common belief. Like I am a man of faith, although wildly flawed and certainly no saint, right? But still that same structure of belief. But we're very, very different. I mean, I think there's maybe one kind of like concept that I attribute to learning from him in the book, and that's the concept of tragic moral choice. That there's just some times in life where there's no good choice, and you have to choose the least worst option and still live at peace with yourself when there's collateral damage at the end, right? And I think that's one concept I learned from him.
Yeah, and that's really interesting what you talk about, laying off and the bankruptcy. So I recommend people look into that as well. And on your book, you've showed it to people, but most people listen to the audio version at this stage. Can you tell us what it's called and how people find it, even though it'll be in the episode notes?
The book is called Failure Rules with an exclamation mark at the end, kind of like a fist in the air proclamation. Subtitle is for entrepreneurs, creatives, and authentics. And you can find it anywhere books are sold online, all 4 formats. There's a great audio book with great narration and some music interspersed in it, hardcover, paperback, ebook, the whole gamut. So find it wherever you get books online.
Cool. And that's all, as I said in the episode notes below. And I got so many questions on this, but we've, answered 90% of them because your life story comes into this and it's easy to read. How rewarding has been writing this book for you?
I mean, honestly, this was one of those things that pulled on me. I had started and stopped and didn't work on it for like 6 months, but it kept pulling on me. And I go back to the manuscript. I'm like, I got to get this done. Like, this has to happen. I can't go to my deathbed not finishing this book, not releasing it to the world, regardless of the magnitude of impact it does or doesn't have. So this is the one book that I'll write that is the most autobiographical. I think future books I work on will be less autobiographical, more just based on a thesis with some personal anecdotes. And so for me, this is definitely like, this is the one thing that I know I'm going to rest well, on my deathbed, knowing that even if I didn't finish everything I started, that finishing this is going to feel real good.
That's so cool. And also, I don't even know what the word is, but, courageous of you with going through all of your challenges and to not only want to deal with them, which is fantastic, and a lot of people do that, but then to, then put pen to paper, which is really hard as we've established, and then to actually express, what you went through to also want to help others as well. That's very rare. There's a lot of like layers there. Did you ever come from fear of, telling your story, or was this you just knew within you putting pen to paper would be healing, not only for you, but for others?
Well, it really put a lot of like, I think, closure to my own feelings around my life. And then as it kind of revealed lessons in the writing, then I was like, wow, okay, this is really less about me. It can be more about, hey, anybody who wants to kind of skip the line and not experience certain things, or be prepared to digest certain experiences with maybe a little more wisdom, this is going to be a great tool. And so, I felt like I was, it behooved me to put it out into the world, and try to make it hopefully a roadmap or blessing to others, particularly people in their 20s and 30s, before they kind of really start to experience some things that really have a chance to knock them down and knock them down hard, So this is the roadmap for getting the fuck up. That's what this is.
I like that. And writing the book, did you learn more about yourself? Like, were there any like interesting insights that you had that you weren't necessarily aware of?
That's a good question. I'm sure there was, but generally, I think it was mostly stuff I knew was inside of me, and I just need to put language to it, put story down.
Yeah, this is a question from my wife. Otherwise, all of them are mine. How has failure shaped your understanding of who you are versus what you do?
I think really it's decoupling my identity from failure events. And that's failure rule number 5 is you are not your failures. And to me, that is like the biggest thing. So many people, they experience some failures or they have fear of failures. It's mostly fear around them being attached or their reputation being attached to a potential failure or a real failure. And I think that is just so crippling for actually living an authentic, full life. And so for me, the most freeing thing is to be like, yeah, these events happened, or these events could happen if I go down this road. And that's fine. It's not going to be who I am. It'll be something I experience, something I learn from, and something I leverage and optimize no matter what it is. And to me, that's the most freeing thing is just decoupling yourself from failure events, decoupling your identity from them.
I agree, because we're not our failures, and you talk about this as well. It's an experience that happened, but you are not that experience, and that's really important, because often we think that life is what happens to us, but I don't agree with that. It's what you learn from those experiences, and that comes across very well as well. Last 2 on the book. Why, and I think this is really cool, you added a soundtrack. Can you tell me why you decided to add that?
I mean, these are the actual songs that either helped get me through some of the experiences I write about in the book, or were songs that I listened to while I was writing the book. So these songs like really gave me strength, particularly through the lyrics, through some of these times. So I thought it made sense to like put a soundtrack to the book, right? Because I mean, to me, like there's always a soundtrack to my life, songs that I associate with certain seasons of my life, with certain, accomplishments or certain struggles. And so just adding the flavor of that musical overlay made sense to me.
Cool. And you spoke.
And for listeners, you can find that soundtrack on Spotify or Apple Music too, the Failure Rule soundtrack.
And also on your website as well, which is easy as well. And we spoke briefly at the start of the podcast, but the importance of humor and to be able to laugh, especially going through tough times. Can you tell me about that? I love that. That's kind of my ethos on life as well.
Oh, 100%, man. I mean, it's like, that goes with like decoupling your identity from the failures. Like if you're decoupling your identity from your failures, you can laugh at them, man. You can laugh at them and even get joy at laughing at your own failures. It's like, to me, like the OG of failure humor is Rodney Dangerfield, right? Like, like he was an aluminum siding salesman, depressed, divorced, grew up being picked on for being Jewish. He took all those experiences and put that into like brilliant, amazing, deflective failure humor, right? And
he changed the game.
Yeah. So like, I think that attitude is a great way to go through life, man, and to assimilate failures, or even like Bill Burr is another one I think is great at that. I met Bill Burr at a comedy show he was doing once. Afterwards, I was in the hotel with my son. My son recognized him, and there was like nobody else around. And when he was on stage, he was talking about wanting a cigar. So when we saw him in the hotel, I'm like, hey, did you get a cigar yet? And he's like, no, meet me out back. So we went out back, and there was like nobody there for a while, he talked to his manager in his opening act, and then he came over to me and my son and talked to us for a while. I'm like, I had a cigar with him, got a picture taken with him. And I told him about the book and tell him about the concept of failure humor. He's like, that's exactly what I do. It's failure humor. That's what it is. So like, fascinating with him. He's like, that's exactly what this is. You know?
Oh, I'm so glad that you had that. And also you talk about, what's the word? Not being, laughing at yourself, but not putting yourself down is also really important as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you can have self-esteem and integrity and still kind of like laugh at yourself, right? I mean, it's like, if we're all imperfect, if we're all as, there's many different words for it, right? The Greek would call it hamartia, missing the mark. Christians would call it sin. The Hare Krishnas would call it, what do they call it? I think it's Myra or something, Maya. And, my friend John Joseph would call it the enemy mind. We all have something screwed up in us, There's always, none of us are perfect. So if that's the case anyway, accept it, laugh about it, realize your uniqueness, and don't beat yourself up about it.
I agree. Great place to do a rapid fire segment. So the first thing that springs to mind, but you can take your time to think about it. Ready to rumble.
Ready to rumble makes me think of Rumble in Brighton, the song by the Stray Cats.
I don't know that one. Or maybe I do. I'll have a look afterwards.
Rumble in Brighton, Stray Cats. Great song.
You've answered most of these, so we'll start with it. Okay. Favorite thing about yourself?
PMA, positive mental attitude through all circumstances.
Biggest pet peeve?
Biggest pet peeve. Undue negativity. Can't deal with it.
Something you want to get better at?
Emotional intelligence. There's always room for improvement there. I still have a long way to go.
What are you most proud of?
I was proud of the key relationships in my life. I think that's what I'm most proud of. Friends, family, girlfriend.
What would you do if you knew you cannot fail?
What would I do if I knew I could not fail? I would do a lot more. I'd say that. Yeah, I would. If I knew I could not fail, I would quit my job and pursue a bunch of other things. That would definitely happen. I would pursue more creative things.
Any that spring to mind?
I would just write books and podcasts and speak full time.
Oh, nice. So you're putting it out to the universe will happen. Nick, you've already answered. So would that be your next big dream or goal?
I'm embracing the Thing 1 and Thing 2 framework, and I am working on my next book, very early stages, and I'm going to launch a podcast sometime in the new year, probably like Q2. So I'm working on that.
Oh, cool. If you could go back into time when you were first starting out, what advice would you give yourself and why? Backup plans, redundancy. Make sure you plan for it. That's the advice I give myself. Before I ask how people can follow you and keep up to date with you, what's the one question I should have asked you?
So one question you should have, I don't know. You were pretty good, Michael. I don't really know. That's a tough one. I don't know. I can't even think of anything, to be honest with you. This was a good interview. Cool. Thank you. I agree. And before we go, how can people follow you, keep up to date with you? We've got all the book stuff, Instagram, your web, I'll put your website, anything else you want me to put up? Yeah, I'd say Instagram is I'm most active on. So at Andrew Thorp King, no E on the end of Thorp. So Andrew Thorp King, no E on the end of Thorp. And then the website too, andrewthorpking.com. I'd say they're the two best places for now. There's a YouTube channel too, but I'm not really active on it. So Instagram's the best. Cool. Okay. Thank you so much. You've got a very unique way of seeing life. I love it. We've got very similar outlooks on life. Very uplifting and empowering guy. And yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Thanks, Michael.
I love how Andrew talks about the calling journey. That is the feeling we have deep within our soul, the thing that lights us up. And as Andrew says, the calling journey refers to the path you walk when you align with your true purpose, blending your unique talents, experiences, values, and what feels uniquely authentic for you. It's not just a career plan, it's more of a life calling. We all have unique journeys. No one person is the same. Sometimes we might not know what our calling journey is. However, Andrew encourages us to look within, make small steps towards the thing that excites us, and eventually the path will be revealed. He further highlights how once identified, no matter how big or small, we must take action, and in doing so, we'll learn to trust ourselves further and see the bigger picture. Andrew's story is a reminder to all of us that failure should not get in the way from doing what we want, and we must treat failure as feedback and not a dead end. He reminds us that we must keep moving forward. So I'll leave you with this epic quote. All journeys have secret destinations of which the traveler is unaware. Martin Buber. Thank you for listening to the Funny and Failure podcast, exploring the deeper side of comedy.